So I wanted to do a recap of my hunt in North Dakota this year. I had an archery whitetail tag, and I actually ended up going to North Dakota 3 different times. I went once the opening weekend, which started August 30th. Didn't have any luck. I went back November 2nd, I believe, for a few days. Saw a few bucks, but couldn't connect on any of those. And then I actually just went back December 21st, and I was there for 3 days. And on the third day, I was able to tag the buck that you're going to see in this video. I know a lot of guys in the beast hunt out of state, or a lot of guys are thinking about hunting out of state, and I just wanted to share some of my experiences. I think it's real important when you're hunting out of state to make sure you first do your cyber scouting, obviously, but second is to not get hung up on that. You want to get out there and cover a bunch of ground as quickly as you can, speed scouting, driving around spots in your car. I think a big factor in my success this year is I didn't settle for marginal hunting spots. When I was there in September, I was in an area that I did see some deer in, but I didn't feel confident in the area. I wasn't finding the kind of sign that is conducive to the way I like to hunt. And there was also quite a bit of pressure on the public land in that area. I know North Dakota's big early season. A lot of people are buying tags just to try to get a velvet buck. I'm from Michigan originally, so I don't have a lot of experience hunting early season in September. I wasn't sure if it was my lack of experience or the area, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't having the kind of success or the sightings that I've come to expect. So after my hunt ended in September, I came back to Montana and I was looking over the maps. I found a couple new areas that I wanted to try, and I was lucky enough to tag a archery mule deer here early October. So when November rolled around, I'd already filled my deer tag in Montana, and I decided the first week of November to head back to North Dakota, hoping that the route would get more deer up and be more visible and I'd have a little more success. Unfortunately, when I went back in November, I went to a new area and I was struggling again. I did see a few more deer and a couple of bucks. Again, I just wasn't finding the kind of setups that I was confident in, and I felt like I was really struggling. So I checked out a few other areas in November, and I wasn't confident in any of them. After a pretty fruitless hunt in early November, I headed back to Montana. Didn't have any luck getting anything in bow range during that first week in November. The second week in November, I took a whole week off work and met up with J Moss 07 over in South Dakota. Got real lucky over there. I spotted some deer the first night from the truck, and then the next morning, which was my second day there, went into that area and I got real lucky and was fortunate enough to kill my best whitetail buck. Actually grunted this buck in from the ground. It was a pretty neat hunt. I wish I had that on video. At this point, I was feeling pretty good about my season. I had tagged my first archery mule deer and also tagged my biggest whitetail buck in South Dakota. That was short-lived. After a few weeks, that North Dakota tag started burning a hole in my pocket again. Then Dane released his late season video, the Tide Weave video, where he talked about getting after it in late season and the how bad do you want it kind of stuff. And it really got me thinking. But I just wasn't confident. I'd been to North Dakota twice this year. I didn't have much luck. So I actually talked to Lockdown and T. Buno from the Beast and also J Moss, and told the guys, I wanted to get back over there, but kind of needed some motivation. So all three of those guys gave me some good encouragement, told me to get back out there and get back to North Dakota and get after it. My girlfriend headed home for the holidays on December 20th, and that night I packed up my stuff, and the next morning I loaded up my truck and headed out to North Dakota. I actually went back to the same area that I'd hunted in November. I'd found one good area with quite a bit of sign, and I was anxious to see what that looked like. I also knew there was a standing cornfield there the first week of November, and that a lot of the corn was coming out late in North Dakota. So I wanted to see if that cornfield was still up and if there was any sign in that same wood area that I'd hunted in November. And I also wanted to see if there was more activity around that standing cornfield. When I got to that area, I was pretty disappointed. All the rut sign had obviously went cold, into the middle of December, late December here. And there just wasn't the kind of sign or deer numbers that I expected around the cornfield. So I did hunt there that night, but I only saw 2 does quite a ways off in the distance. And again, I just wasn't confident in that area. So I packed up my truck and I marked some other areas on Onyx that I wanted to check out. And I decided that I was just going to drive by all these areas that night, and I was going to look for more deer sign tracks crossed on the road, more food sources, which was predominantly standing corn in this area, North Dakota. And more heavy bedding cover, thermal cover. So that's what I did. I got on the road, started heading that way, and ended up driving by about 10, 12 different pieces that night. And the one piece I was real interested in, I got to just as I was about ready to go to sleep, about 11 o'clock that night. So I'd been driving for about 5 hours checking out all these properties. When I got to this last property, I finally started seeing what I was hoping to see. Again, this property had a standing cornfield, and it was just loaded up with tracks all the way around it like a highway. So I made a plan to get in there the next morning, put my backpack on, take my bow, kind of do some still hunting and scout and cover this, look for some good setups. So that's what I did. So I was really surprised when I got in there. The next day, almost immediately, I was into deer. I saw a doe maybe 200 yards from my truck. Another couple hundred yards, I'd seen 5 does. About a half hour later, I spooked 2 bucks. I believe one of those bucks was the one that I ended up shooting the next day. All told that day, I saw 5 or 6 different bucks, probably 50 does. And I was just blown away by the number of deer in there compared to all the other spots that I'd hunted so far this year in North Dakota. So I didn't end up getting any shots fired in day 1, but I was real confident. And during the course of the day, I was out all day. I walked about 7 miles. I actually picked out 3 setups for tree stands, and I was pretty confident the next day that I was going to get into a good area. And if I didn't get a buck, I felt like I was going to be in a good position to observe and then move in for a kill either that night or the following morning. And I only had about a day and a half left to hunt, so I was really trying to get in there and get after it. So the next morning, I headed in early. I got up at 4:15. I had about a 30-40 minute drive to get to this property, and then it was almost a 2-mile walk to get into where I wanted to hang my stand from where I could park. So I got up real early, headed in, and by the time I got to the tree, I put my sticks on and it was getting gray light. And by the time I hung my stand, put all my clothes on that I had packed in, climbed into the stand, it was legal shooting light already, which was a half hour before sunrise in North Dakota. And it was already dawn, so I could see about 200 yards when I climbed in the stand. It wasn't too long after that, maybe 25, 35 minutes, and I looked up and I saw a lone deer coming my way about 150 yards out. I usually carry my binos, so I got my binos out, checked the deer over, and I could see that it had antlers. It wasn't a real big one, but at this point in the year, with only a day and a half left to hunt and all the time I'd put into North Dakota and all these different areas where I was really struggling, I was pretty excited to see this buck. So I decided at that point, if he came into a good range, that I would go ahead and shoot him. And as luck would have it, he started working my way. And at one point, about 40 yards out, he stopped. Actually made a scrape, which I was real surprised. So this was December 23rd, I think. And he was making a scrape, working a licking branch real hard at about 40 yards. And that was pretty neat to see. And then after he quit working the branch, he came about another 10, 15 yards closer, and I was able to get a good shot on him at 25 yards. Well, guys, just shot a buck here in North Dakota. About to get on the blood trails, looking pretty good so far. Uh-oh, I think I see a dead buck. Nice. Didn't make her too far. 75 yards maybe. Oh yeah, looks like a nice shot. Make sure he's dead here. Pretty sure he is. Oh yeah. Alright, let's take a look at him. guys, got a tine broke off. Kind of tall and tight. Oh, a nice buck for late season. I'll take it. Well, I got him flipped over here. Here's the entrance hole. Drilled him. Pretty happy with that shot. He was about 25 yards when I shot. Alright guys, back here at the scene of the crime. Right here's where I shot the buck. You can see blood right away. Here's where we were standing. There's some hair got cut off. You can see right there's my stand. So I had pretty good back cover. He actually stopped when I drew, but I don't think he could see me. And I think he just heard a noise. It's so quiet in here. So I don't have a lot of experience with late season hunting, but I did learn a lot through this trip and through my time in North Dakota in general this year. So I wanted to share some of that stuff with you guys. Obviously at this time of the year, food is huge. The bucks are recovering from their rut. So that was one of the things I was really seeking out. This area in North Dakota had a lot of wheat fields. So the main food source late season for sure was standing corn, you know, aside from browse and other natural stuff. But for ag, the corn was king for sure. So that's what I really tried to key in. I was trying to key in on either standing cornfields or cut cornfields that hadn't been plowed under yet. And I was trying to find bedding near those. And this setup actually ended up working out pretty good. I found a standing cornfield. It was actually on the private land right next to the public. But I could tell that from the map, most of the good bedding was probably going to be on the public land, and from the cornfield to the public was probably, it was close to 2 miles. So I figured if I saw those deer in there the day before, if I got in early and those deer were feeding in the corn, that there's a good chance they'd be coming back late to bed. And I could also tell in this area that there hadn't been any late season pressure at all. There was snow on the ground that was a week or two old, and I didn't see a single set of boot tracks. I didn't see any other bow hunting setups at all. I did see one tree standing there, but it looked like it had been there for quite a while. I also hunt really aggressive. So day one in that property, I actually walked almost the entire property and I blew out a ton of deer. Like I said, 5-6 bucks, 50 does. But I'm not really worried about that because I just didn't blow them out of one area. I blew them out of everywhere. And my plan was to, one, I hadn't seen hardly any deer in North Dakota, so I wanted to make sure there was deer in this area. And once I confirmed there were deer in the area, I wanted to make sure I had 2 or 3 setups, so I didn't have to go back in there scouting again. I wanted to get all that scouting out of the way the first day or the first morning, and then make sure I had some solid setups for the next 2 or 3 hunts that I was going to have there. So that's what I did. As far as the setups I picked out setups that had obvious bedding features. This area wasn't real thick, so the few thick areas there were, the bedding was pretty obvious, and it helped that there was snow on the ground, so I could actually see some of the beds in the snow. Looked for larger beds, larger tracks, areas that had a lot of intersecting trails near the bedding, and trees with good back cover, and that's kind of how I picked my setups. So yeah, so this was a really challenging hunt. Had to stick with it, had to go a few different times, a few different areas, and ended up with me getting a buck here in the late season. Actually the latest I've ever shot a buck, December 23rd. So learned a lot, and I feel like late season was probably the weakest part of my game because I don't hunt late season that often. And in Michigan after gun season, it's so difficult to get on deer that I haven't had a lot of experience with it. So this hunt really upped my confidence in my ability to get it done late season. I think you just need to find the right mix of food, bedding, in an area that's got a relatively low amount or hopefully no pressure. And like Dan said in his videos, a lot of time after gun season, a lot of people pretty much hung it up for the year. And that sure seemed to be the case over here. And boy, the deer were really yarded up in this area on that food and that good bedding. So if you can find an area like that on public, which is difficult, like I said, I drove past 10, 12 areas just on this hunt alone, trying to find an area that had all those ingredients. But when I finally found one, it really paid off. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks.